and all around Europe. And then he also went to Harvard after AIM. After a few years, he went to Harvard, where he took another master's in human development and psychology. Okay, so he's had multiple experiences. For example, Towers Perrin, he was a senior consultant in strategy and organization in Singapore. He will also work for Bank of America as SVP of Learning and Development. He was in Novartis, again, another big global company where he was the global head of talent management and organization development. And before McKinsey, he was most recently also at Kim Moore's as the Chief Talent Officer in charge of performance management, learning and development, diversity and inclusion, as well as helping to craft the operating culture for over 7,000 employees. So he also writes regularly on the topics related to human capital and leadership. And also, on a personal note, he is passionate about cricket. He likes reading, he likes spending time with his family, especially his lovely wife, Rika, who he met in this classroom many years ago. And they have 3 beautiful kids, Sanjay, Sachin, and Shaira. So they are based in the greater Philadelphia area of Pennsylvania. So I really want all of us to welcome Mohit for joining us and sharing his insights and his advice, right, about what he's learned along the way after AIM.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for being here. I am very, very privileged and honored to be back in the same classroom that I was sitting right there, a seat that is actually empty right now. And my wife used to sit right here, so I had a very, very good. She did not particularly have a great view, but I did. What I want to do first of all is, I've been very, very blessed in a lot of ways, and the only way I can think of, even in some way repaying the debt of gratitude is to acknowledge the professors who taught me. And there are actually 3 of them in this room. There is Professor Denise Lopez. She was the one who taught my first class. My first class in AIM was taught by her. She was the program director at that particular point in time for the batch of 99. Professor Mike Luz is here. I want to thank him for making the time to be here. And then Professor Borromeo, Junbo Borromeo. And all 3 of them, there is a tradition of giving out pens, as you might have known, to professors, right? To professors whom you like, whom you adore, whom you learn from. And so there's a gift I'd like to give to you. So only Denise Lopez gets the applause, not Mike. This is real partiality right here. I would, there needs to be some degree of equality. So what we're going to talk about is leadership, culture, and career. We're going to talk about leadership transitions, some learnings that I've had during the course of my own life. And we're going to talk about 3 things. Who am I? I've been introduced, but then, who am I? Who am I as an individual? And I'll do that. What have been my career transitions? What have I learned from there? What we'll do is I'll talk for about maybe 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. And then what I'm really interested in is your questions. Okay? So let's begin. The story of trees is my life. My story is a story of trees. The first thing I would say is, I'm from India, if you haven't noticed that yet. I have taken up American citizenship recently, but I'm from India. If you haven't watched a Bollywood movie in your life, you are missing out on something. Okay? It's 3 hours of mindless entertainment that you need to partake yourself of. Third photograph on top is the photograph of the greatest cricket player that India has produced, Sachin Tendulkar. That also happens to be the name of my son, Sachin. Obviously, he's been named after the cricketer. There are 3 professions I've had. I've been a teacher, I've been a consultant, and I'm still a consultant, and I work for Bank of America, Novartis, and Divorce. In consulting, you can't see it, but it's written there very clearly. Consulting is, if you can't be part of the solution, there is enough money to be made in prolonging the problem. That's what we consultants do. We create some more problems so that we can earn some more money. Last thing, personally, I have 3 absolutely lovely kids. That's my wife, Rita, in the middle picture. We are watching the tennis open. In the background, there is Roger Federer. This is the exact photograph that is there in the living room of Roger Federer. The exact same photograph that he wakes up to. We used to have 3 different passports. My wife had a Filipino passport, I had an Indian passport. My kids were born in America, so they have an American passport. Now it used to be very difficult at immigration as to which line to enter. Now we know which one. And what I talk about is, and there are 3 academic institutions, I forgot that. There are 3 academic institutions I've been a part of: University of Delhi, of course the Asian Institute of Management, and I also studied at Harvard. The first transition I want to talk about is the transition from college to teaching. I was in college, I didn't know what I was going to do. I got this particular notice which said, want to make a difference in children's lives. And who doesn't want to make a difference in children's lives, right? So I went to teach. I went to teach in a school called the Doon School. It is up in the Himalayas. In India, it's a private school, and I learned a lot there about communication. It's the first lesson I learned in life was about communication. Communication is one of the most important things that we can learn in terms of either change management, in terms of engagement, because communication is not one-way communication. I'll give you an example. I was teaching geography. In geography, one of the lessons was, if the time in London is 10 a.m., what is the time in Delhi? And the students looked at me like, what? What is this? They were not interested in it at all. Now, what do you think are 13-year-old boys in India passionate about? They're passionate about cricket. And the Indian cricket team was visiting London at that point in time, and so I changed the question to, if the match is going to begin between India and England in London at 10 a.m., what time will you switch on your television set in Delhi? Is it 10? Oh no, it's not 10. What is it? Is it 2? No, it's not 2. Oh, it's 3:30. Why is it 3:30? So always try and look from the perspective of the recipient of the information, not from your own perspective. I was teaching them time sums, but they wanted to know about cricket and how it would be more interesting to them. The second lesson I learned was around candor, around honesty, around if you don't know an answer, don't fudge your way through it. Fake it till you make it is not my mantra. If you don't know an answer, just say, look, I'm really sorry. I don't know. I'll find it out and get back. 13 to 15-year-old students taught me that. Transition to academics. I taught for a few years. I was intellectually fulfilled and financially bankrupt. So I decided I need to do something to earn some more money. So I came to AIM. The case room was one of the biggest learnings for me. The case room meant there were different perspectives. There was no one right answer. There were different perspectives to things. The can group was a very interesting learning. What I learned was, are people still in can groups?
Learning teams.
Learning teams, okay. The name has changed, but I hope the flavor is the same. Because the learning team, you suddenly realize that the answer sometimes is not with you, it is with somebody else. And working with that learning team makes it that much more interesting. Well, the fact that my eventual wife was in my can group helped. I spent a lot of time with the learning team. Then I went into consulting. I graduated out of AIM. I went into consulting. I was at Towers Parent in Singapore. And one of the first lessons I learned there was around ambiguity, managing information. You don't have one right answer. There are 3 different answers. How do you get to the right answer? And you get to the right answer through authenticity. Through asking, what is your value system? Where are you trying to go? There was a client in Singapore that asked us, should we deepen our relationships in Singapore or should we globalize ourselves? Should we go into Vietnam? Should we go into Cambodia? Should we go into the US? And the data would tell us any which way. But the question was, where do you really want to be? Do you want to be a global player or do you want to be a player in Singapore? And that question gives the answer. Well, every 5 years I get bored and I turn to academics. So I decided to go to study again. I went to Harvard, and one of the first things Harvard taught me was there are so many people who are smarter than me. It's not even funny. There are so many. What I learned was humility. What I learned was being very humble about who you are and counting your own blessings. And what we'll do is we'll do a short exercise around counting your own blessings, but I'll keep it to the end. The second thing I learned was about doing absolutely the right thing. Even if your boss is saying something, even if your boss's boss is saying something that you don't agree with, then speak up and do the right thing. Doing the right thing is probably the most difficult but most important lesson that Harvard lectures actually taught. Consulting to corporate, the third transition. A lot about risk and then a lot about resilience. So we spoke about the fact that I was at Bank of America. I was at Bank of America in the year 2007. In 2007, they just promoted me from being a vice president to being a senior vice president. By the way, that's not very impressive in banking because everyone starts out as a vice president. The only people who are impressed were my parents in India, who thought I would be president next. And they have been still deeply disappointed that I haven't become president of Bank of America. I said, but you're a senior vice president, what happened? So, as a senior vice president, I was moved from Boston to Charlotte, which is the headquarters of Bank of America. But what was happening in the financial services industry in 2007? What happened? The meltdown was happening. There was a crisis. The meltdown was happening. This was the biggest leadership role I had in my life. There were about 60 people who were reporting into me. We were doing learning and leadership development for the entire global technology and operations team, which was 75,000 people at Bank of America. In June of that year, I was told to lay off 3 people, 3 of my direct reports. Now that struck a dagger through my heart. I didn't know these people very well, but I knew I had impacted their families. As you know, in corporate life, work never goes away. So I began to work harder and harder. My energy levels began to go down, and what I realized is by July, August of that year, I began to lose my sleep. I began to exercise less. I began to watch cricket less. By September of that year, it had come to such a point that I went into my office and I couldn't make head or tail of an email. I went to my boss and I said, look, I'm done. I'm completely burnt out. I can't work here anymore. My boss was very supportive. He said, look, this happens to the best of us. I'll get you in touch with somebody. I'll get you in touch with somebody who can help you. And he put me in touch with Tony Schwartz. Tony Schwartz eventually ended up writing a book called The Way We Are Working Isn't Working. The Way We Are Working Isn't Working. And then he did an exercise with me that I'd like to do with all of you at this particular point in time. He asked me to make a list of all the things that I'm grateful for in my life. Just a list of all the things that I'm grateful for. What I'd like you to do is make that list right now on a piece of paper for me. Okay? Just take a piece of paper and write down your gratitude list. If you don't have paper, do it on your laptops. I don't know. This is the 21st century. You're like, paper? What kind of person is this guy? He's coming from the 18th century. I want you to write it down, and I'll tell you the reason why. Just trust me. Okay, if you finished it, what I want you to do is share whatever you're comfortable with the person sitting next to you. What are you grateful for? Take about 2 minutes to do that. If nobody's sitting next to you, please move next to a person who could sit next to you. Once you made the list, please share it with somebody. So you need to start talking to somebody. Relations. Okay, let's get back. Okay, let's get back. So can somebody not share their list, but just share how do you feel at this particular point in time? How are you feeling? Anybody? Yes.
I'm always worried that I haven't done enough. But when I talk to Dana about what I have done, I feel like okay, I think I have done enough for the time being, and I can do more. So it just reminded me that I have done enough, even though I think I didn't do. Even though it's like I haven't done enough according to my potential, but I guess I did some of the stuff that I'm proud of.
There is stuff that you're proud of and that you are saying you've done enough. Yes, sir. Constantly monitoring that, feeling pleased about it, feeling happy about it, feeling grateful about it. We'll take one more, and then we'll move. One more person. How are you feeling at this particular point? Yes.
I feel more refocused about this and what I'm grateful, and suddenly I feel a lot of voice sound that I have lately, like, oh, I have this still, even though I lost so many things like this.
Even if you lost so many things, there are so many things that you can still be grateful for. Yes, sir, you have your hand up. Why did we take you?
I was never a grateful person, I think. Because I never gave thought to this. So when I wrote down this list, I'm content with myself that, how grateful I am having all these blessings.
How grateful you are for having all these blessings. And what happens is in times of stress, and I'm talking about this in resilience, because in times of stress, we tend to forget all the things that we need to be grateful for. And that's why it's very important to write the list down and keep it somewhere where you can see it. Because in times of stress, this is the first thing you will forget. Apart from the phone calls that you get. The other interesting thing that Tony Schwartz did was, his entire work is around energy and energy management. And so you, as a leader, as a person, as an employee, constantly need to manage your energy. When we talk about employee engagement, it's all about managing positive energy and keeping the negative energy out as much as possible. Because only positive energy, only staying above the line, as we call it in McKinsey, can make for constructive solutions. Okay. I want to give you an example here of a career decision I took in the year 2015, actually in the year 2016. So I got a call. I was working for Novartis at that time. I got a call from the head of HR at Chemours, which is a spin-off from DuPont. So it was a spin-off from DuPont, and she said, could you join us as the head of talent? I met some of the people, I felt, they were very good, and I wanted to make that particular decision. But what does a married person do when you get an offer like that? What do they do? Share it with their wife. So I asked Rika, should I join this particular company? And Rika is trained as an auditor. She's from SGV. So she went there and she said, let me look up the stock price. and the stock price was starting out at 20.85 when I was being given the offer in 2016. This was the stock price. Okay? Now, given this information, would you join this company? You would still join this company. Why?
If, yeah, you're taught here that if there is a problem, if there is a gap, that's where we should actually go, because that's where we can help.
But this is disaster. It's absolute disaster. This could go further down. Somebody said it's an opportunity. Who said it's an opportunity? Who? Yeah, opportunity. So what's your name?
Jack.
Jack?
Yes.
This is an opportunity for you?
Yes.
Wow, why?
It means that the business is either their profits are either going down.
Yeah.
And that they're not relevant in the
Marketplace
yeah,
anymore.
So with that, there's a lot of opportunity so that you can make changes and turn that around. Make yourself relevant.
Make yourself relevant again and turn it around. That is exactly the argument that I took. When I joined, the stock, when I actually signed the dotted line, the stock was $4.19. When I joined in March, the stock was $3.69. Greater opportunity there. Right? It's greater opportunity. At the same time, in terms of employee engagement, in terms of employee health, we measured it by organizational health. The score was 22 out of 100. Okay? My CEO called me into the office and said, we have created a new bottom fifth quartile on here, not just fourth quartile. It's the fifth quartile. But you know, as the head of talent, as you rightly pointed out, it was a tremendous opportunity. Worked on employee engagement, worked on communication, worked on organizational restructuring, worked on getting into the right markets. And our organizational health in 2016 was 22nd percentile. 2017 was 57th percentile. 2018 was 71st percentile. You're saying that's all very good in terms of employee engagement, but what's happening to the stock price? Stock price was $4.19 in February of 16. There's a little bit of dip here, but it's held pretty steady. I mean, despite some of the headwinds that we're facing, it held pretty steady. It was at this particular point in time that McKinsey said, look, you've done so much work on engagement, on culture, on organizational health, etc. Join us. We've been working with you. Why don't you join us? And I did. An important career transition as well. And it's been fascinating over the last 5 months. We just have a couple of things to think about. In terms of your own career, I know a lot of you are starting your career, a lot of you are mid-career. In terms of career, there is a model that was given to me by one of my professors, which I think you should keep in mind, and I have always kept in mind, which is there are three things to career development. The first one is around skill. It's what you know. You know, typically we say, oh, how can we develop our career? What skills do we need to develop our career, right? But the second thing is very important. Second thing is network, which is who you know. So develop relationships. And when you develop relationships, develop lasting relationships. Develop authentic relationships. You never know when you would need somebody or somebody would need you. And therefore, pay it forward. And the last part of this triangle, the triangle is not showing up right now. The last part of this triangle is identity, which is how you are known. What's your name? Nikki. So Nikki could be very, very good in terms of communication skills. Okay, skill is very good. Nikki also knows me, she knows Denise, she knows a bunch of people. Her network may be really good, but you know what everybody else is talking about Nikki? She is terrible to work with. She's a terrible team player. You think she's going to get the job? No! How you are known is incredibly important. So getting feedback, getting 360 feedback, getting feedback from other people as to how you're interacting with them is very, very important. Skill, what you know, network, who you know, identity, how you know. I'll end with 3 lessons that I've learned in my life. As I said, my life is basically a story of 3s. And then I will take any question on anything you would like. I will take any question on any topic apart from politics. That is the only subject I don't talk about. Lessons learned over the course of my life. First one, and they all start with never. Never follow money, follow your passion. Whatever you're passionate about, follow that passion and money will follow. Don't say this is the most lucrative job, so I'm going to do it. Because you'll be miserable in that job if you don't like it. Follow your passion. So don't follow investment banking just because it is the best thing in the world to do. Because it is giving you the most money. Follow whatever you're passionate about. Find that passion and follow it as much as possible. Never blindly follow advice, be the real you. So always seek advice from people. Okay? Seek input from people, saying, you know, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'd like to do, what do you think? But take that information and find the real you. Don't just blindly follow what anybody is going to do. Because your career is your own career, it's your own life. And the last lesson is, never give up, be resilient, always. Always be resilient. There will be ups and downs in your life. There will be downs when you feel like nothing is working. Maybe there is no path ahead. Maybe the world is looking a little dark. But remember, look at your gratitude list and lift yourself up and talk to somebody who you really care about. And they will care about you. Thank you very much, and I'll take any question you want.
You mentioned about the employee engagement, and what was the very first thing that you focused on when you were in that journey?
Employee engagement was very, very low, and the first thing that we focused on at that particular point in time was being truly authentic as a leadership team. And I'll give you an example. When we came up with the score of 22nd percentile, I wrote out a communication for the CEO, which was a very positive kind of communication. You know, we are in the 22nd percent, but there is a ton of opportunity. In fact, things are looking good. And the CEO told me, nobody will believe this. We are in the 22nd percentile. We are rock bottom. Why don't we say that? Right now, we suck. That's what it is. That's the truth. No sandwich. Sandwiches, remember, are for lunch. Is that what you're teaching?
I told them, I taught some of the coaching is that avoid the sandwich.
Avoid the sandwich technique, exactly.
And you
Avoid
communication.
And in communication, authenticity is very important. Because remember this, There is this model from Eric Berne, the parent, adult, child, right? There is a parent, adult, child in each of us. Treat everybody like an adult, and they will treat you like an adult. If you treat them like children, they will react a very different way. So that was the first thing we did, change our communication technique, change our communication to a way that was much more effective. And that led to path. Great question. And she was here 5 minutes early, so any other question?
I have a question about how do McKinsey consultants operate, especially now the data incoming. I mean, I've actually read the book, The McKinsey Way, and you know how the consultants go about things. So, I mean, whatever I figure out that they actually got they got you know. But I want to know how has that changed with the advent of new technology, and how do McKinsey still provides, with the fees they charge as a consultant, you know, how do they
We
actually
charge fees? Really?
It's a-
I never heard of any fees.
McKinsey people actually run all the
Well, I hope not. But there is one thing, one truism in this. Out of the Fortune 500 CEOs, there are 3 things that are common. There are 3 things that are found in their resume. It's either Harvard, or McKinsey, or GE. GE is not great anymore, but GE is also. In terms of the question, how do consultants operate in the time of increasing data and technology? Remember this, with whatever data we have, at the end of the day, a human mind is still making the decision. A human being is still making a particular decision. You could show me data that will help me make a decision. But that doesn't mean that I completely forget my right brain intuition in terms of what the left brain data is telling. So the way we work typically is we look at a lot of data, and we look at data which is quantitative, and then we look at data that is qualitative. And then we frame an approach which we then consult with the CEO and his leadership team to say what would be the best way going forward. We also look at external data to see if there's anything that is missing in the current one. So that would be kind of in a 30-second, that's the approach that we use for problem solving.
I mean, has it ever been a case that the data set is suggesting something else and your intuition is completely what it is?
See, I cannot speak for all consultants, but I can speak for myself. And there is sometimes that thing that happens, which is the data is telling you go this particular direction. And you feel, having done the qualitative analysis, because typically qualitative data gives you something else. It may corroborate the data that you already have, or it may give you some other insight. And at that point in time, you have to trust it. Any other question? Yes.
So, given your challenge when you had to turn around the company you mentioned earlier, they already had a sense of urgency that they needed that change. What would you do in a situation where the change wasn't or isn't as urgent as
So the question is, there was already urgency in Comores. If you ask the employees, there was no urgency. They have been there for 30 years. I've already been guaranteed a plan. I mean, why am I worried about it? In a place where there is no urgency, which is a place like, let's say, Novartis, let's take Novartis, where there is not as much urgency. There is still room to improve. There is still room for growth. And what you do is you create what is called a growth mindset in the organization. In fact, Karen Dweck has written an entire book on this called the growth mindset, which is how do you create a mindset where you grow, both personally, professionally, as well as a business. And that's what you do. You create a growth mindset in the organization. That even if we are 75th percentile, let's say we should be top decile. If we are this, we should be something else. Always shooting for more is something which we do in a business. Yes. After this part of the room will be quiet, and then this part will be quiet. Yes.
You shared about your time at AIM back from now, retrospectively, what do you think you could have done more, or you should have done when you were in school that would have maybe helped you?
How much time do we have? There are a lot of things I could have done so much better. I could have paid so much more attention in my finance class. But seriously, I think the things that could have been, that I could have taken more was to understand the ambiguity of some of the case scenarios. Because I used to do analysis and I used to, but at the end of the day, the key decision is, as a CEO, as a leader, how are you going to move? How are you going to make that decision? And that decision tree, I think, is something I did not pay too much attention. I was more worried about how I would CP in class, or how I would get a, I don't know what grades now there are, but how I would get an A or whatever it would be. I think if I had taken a more holistic approach to how businesses are run, it would be so much better. By the way, I didn't do that well academically in the IIM. Except for HBO, it was my favorite class. Well, it's my career over the last 20 years, and that's where I spent my career. So.
But you work from your strength.
Yes, I truly worked from my strength, which was clearly not rooted in the left side of the brain. It was rooted more in the right side. Okay. There's a question here. Yes.
Can I ask two questions?
Sure.
Hi, my name is Ed. First question is, during your time with kids, are you still connected to them? What was the most, when you joined, what was the most challenging problem you faced, and how did you solve it? The second question is, what are the top 3 blessings in your list of blessings? You can share that with us.
The second question is more difficult than the first one. Because I have to choose 3 blessings. I feel very, very blessed. In terms of the key challenge, one of the most critical challenges that I faced in my early kind of career, I would say it is consulting on organizational culture. Because consulting on financials is quite, I wouldn't say easy, but relatively simpler. You can say, re-engineer this business, let's take this business out, let's do something else. But consulting on organizational culture is difficult. Because you are trying to influence mindsets and change behavior. It's a much more difficult proposition. So that would be the biggest challenge that I face. In terms of the 3 blessings that are the top 3 blessings, I would say the first blessing I've had is education. I think I've been able to receive fantastic education. The second blessing I've had is I've got a set of about 8 to 10 friends. I mean, I have 500 Facebook friends. But I have 8 to 10 who I truly, they call on me, I call on them. We may not talk to each other for 3 to 4 or 5 years, but when we talk, we really are deep. So I've had deep relationships with people, and including some of the professors here, with whom I've been able to connect in a way that has really allowed me to be who I am. And not just because of the fact I am in Manila. I say this at other places too. I'm truly blessed to have my wife and my family. Because she is like a rock. She doesn't get fazed by these things that happen. And even if she's going through, incredible turmoil within, she will be very calm on the outside. And she's very, very calm. So those are the top 3 things. And then yes. toxic overachievers and stubborn CEOs. So, remember this, that a CEO has become the CEO because of the approval of the board and because they've achieved something in life. So there are some positives that are going with them. And to talk to Denise's point around work with the strengths. There are certain strengths that the person has. Work with those strengths to embellish that individual to make them less stubborn. Because stubborn already means that you're putting a judgment on them. That they are stubborn about a decision that you want. How can you put yourself in their shoes and figure out what are the strengths that I'm working with that I can make this stubbornness into something that is a real strength? That's one. Second thing is around toxic overachievers, you said?
Yeah.
Well, I have very little tolerance for toxic people in my life. So what I do is, overachievers I'm totally fine with. But if they are toxic, I consider myself to be a recipient or to be a person who would give them feedback. And if they don't receive that feedback, you know what? I have very good friends in my life. I don't need to deal with you. So that is what I do. Now, you said as a consultant. So as a consultant, what you have to do is work on as much feedback as you potentially can. Because toxicity is very, moves pretty quickly, just as positive energy does. And we need to remove that toxicity as quickly as possible. So get some feedback, get a 360 done, get something else done, get some kind of thing to give this person as much feedback as possible. Because if they are being toxic with you, remember they are being toxic with other people. We'll take a couple of last questions.
Yeah, so,
Yes.
I mean, in relation to what Carissa said, that's what you said. It's also you can do that in your if that's your colleague or if that's your supervisor. What do you do then? Like, how do you give feedback to your supervisor?
How do you give feedback to your supervisor? Upward feedback. How do you give that? Does anybody have any ideas? Ask permission? Hmm? How do you give upward feedback? How do you give your boss feedback? Yes?
I don't know the culture elsewhere, but in all of the jobs that I've been in, my supervisor has always been open to feedback. And if he's the kind of person that's not, maybe it's just not his thing, but I would still like to give him feedback. I would always ask, is now a good time? Are you okay with hearing this?
I am not, Nikki. I am not okay with hearing this, especially from you. Who works for me. I am not okay. I determine your pay and your bonus. Right? Isn't that the challenge? Isn't that the challenge? It's not my day. Yes, it is not my day, but it's none of your business. Go do your own work. Right? Is that the challenge you're working with?
Not now.
Not now. It's a yes. Hmm. Well, in terms of giving upward feedback, there are two ways to go about this. One is actually, despite the fact I was, having a good time here. One is to actually give direct feedback, to say, look, if I need to make you as successful as you potentially can be, so make it about that individual, not about you. If I need to make you as successful as you can be, we need to do this. It's not about you, it's about that. The The second thing, even if that individual doesn't listen to it by now, then you figure out who influences that individual. Who's the key influencer in that person's life? Is it a key colleague? Is it a key supervisor? Then you have to take that person into confidence and talk. Those are the only two mechanisms that I have at least thought. Okay, we'll time for one more question maybe? Last question, okay. You already asked. Okay, go ahead.
Within digitalization, what is the changes that are happening in this employee engagement?
Yep. So with the increasing digitization, what is happening in employee engagement? There are two things happening. I think there are two changes that are happening. One is there is an increase towards immediate gratification. I get the data and you should work on it right now. Right now, I am wanting you to work right now because I'm at 22%. And there is an immediate gratification. The second thing that is happening is there is a little bit of impersonalization of workforce that I am personally concerned about. Because everyone comes in, there is no personal conversations, there is no chica. There's none of that happening. And if that is not happening, how do you build enduring relationships? And if you have to work in the workforce, you have to build enduring relationships. Good. Ed, did you have something to say? Do you have something?
Go ahead.
You answered it.
Yeah.
This is last question, can I? So, based on your story, it seems like all the opportunities fell before you, right? But us, 4 months, 5 months away from graduation, how would we assert ourselves that we can highlight the identity that we have more than the skills? But I think the HR, the admissions process, at least for now, I'm not generalizing, doesn't really focus on identity so much, but the skills. So do you have a certain strategy in terms of selling yourself?
Yep. So I think it's only with the benefit of hindsight that we can say that opportunities fell. I can't even tell you how many resumes I have sent across. Hundreds. They were 2 pages, then they were 1 page, then they were 3 pages, then somebody said, oh, make half a page, put a photograph in, put this in, put that in. I am sick of resumes. I am sick of Mohit version 29. So I think it's only with the benefit of hindsight we can say opportunities fell, because they actually get created as you work. To answer your question, in terms of how do you do it when you are just starting out, there are only 2 answers to that. One is the skill, which is what you can develop as much as possible, and go to as many networking meetings as you can. Because the network is going to give you, even if that person is not able to give you something, they'll be able to direct you to somebody else. I would say a third thing, which is never take rejection personally. Never ever take rejection personally. Just because a person didn't answer their email or they put it in the bottom of the inbox doesn't mean that they don't care about you. It doesn't mean you are any less than you are. You are very good. There's just one opportunity you need. You don't need 20 opportunities. Just one break. And after that break, things will soar. So just be resilient. Okay? Thank you very much.
For sharing your experiences and your insights. So at this point, I think you still have time, maybe
Problema kasi sa akin, sa 9 o'clock, sa 1 So, ngayon naman kasi malapit lang naman sa akin. Kaya lang, matapos yung